Welcome to Biz Talk with Josh, with your host, Joshua I. Smith.
Welcome to the show. I am so pleased to have my good friend of so many, many years. It might even be more around 30 years that I've known Harry Alford, who is the President and Chief Executive Officer of the National Black Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to the show, Harry.
Well, thanks, Josh. Good to be back on.
I know it's a crazy day in the D.C. area, and thank you for, I know you're in your office, and thank you. I know that. Hey, listen, Harry, a lot to talk about. And when Nelson Mandela passed, you're the only person I really thought about because, the perspective of and the impact that he had on business, but more importantly, the businesses in South Africa, small businesses are primarily black businesses, I would imagine, but let's just make that assumption for now. And obviously, when apartheid went away, it cleared up a lot of trade and international relations that needed to be cleared, and you're the one that knows most about that. But let me first talk about the National Black Chamber. So people who don't know what you're all about, for a few minutes, let's talk about that, Harry, and tell me what about the organization. This is your infomercial.
Yeah, we are founded on the premise that capitalism and free markets works for anybody who participates in that system, including African Americans, and that we feel that the African American communities can economically empower themselves through the use of entrepreneurship and business expansion, like it does for any other group that comes to this country. We were here before most of them, but for some reason we didn't understand that until Kay and I founded the National Black Chamber of Commerce in '93. There were a couple of attempts before then, but we hit it at the right time, and people started to understand it, and we took off with 13 local chapters. We now have about 140 chapters in the United States. We just formed the African American Chamber of Commerce of Colombia, which I'm very proud about, and we're going there in April and kick it off with a big trade mission to the country of Colombia, where we now have a free trade agreement with the United States.
Well, you mentioned something, Harry, and we're going to definitely talk about Nelson, but it kind of fits in with why I felt you're the guest, the one person I wanted to talk to today, and our listeners to hear. So much of the energy of the African American community has gone into social issues. So much has not gone into capitalistic economic issues. And when you're in a capitalist country like the United States, and most countries are around the world, that's a concern that I know you deal with every day. I've dealt with throughout my career. What's the impact when your focus is primarily non-economic and certainly non-capitalistic? What are the real challenges facing blacks in terms of entrepreneurship and creating wealth and growing businesses and creating jobs in your own community? What's the fallout when your emphasis is not in that area?
Well, you can't control your money. You can't control your local economy. Every dollar you make goes out. Like Malcolm X said, the eagle flies on Friday, and by noon Saturday it's one dead bird. It just flows right out. It doesn't come back. It doesn't rebuild. And that's our problem.
I didn't hear that one. Thanks. One dead bird, huh?
It's gone, man. It's gone.
Or is it eaten, or is it dies on weight?
It's like it jumped on the bus and went to the suburbs.
It's not funny, but it's rather. I know you fought the battle. I fought it, and when you see so much energy and effort going into so many causes, and not from the very thing that is going to be a solution to the problems we're facing, it makes you more determined, but you also realize how others who don't take on these issues until they have the wherewithal, how much farther they're along. And Harry, what are you doing, and what needs to be done to create this new direction, this essential direction for what I would say growth and even to a great extent survival?
Yeah, we have supposedly political clout now. And take the country of Colombia. They have, when we first started talking to the Black Colombians, they had 31 mayors out of 1,100 towns. Today they have 187 black mayors. We have plenty of black mayors, black city councils, and state reps. And as my guy in Oakland one time told the Oakland City Council, they were crying the blues about Reagan or somebody was being mean to them. He says, look, you got a black city council, you got a black school board, you got a black school superintendent, you got a black fire marshal, you got a black chief of police, you got a black mayor, you got 3 black state reps, and you got a black state senator. If something's wrong with this city, somebody black either did it or let it happen. Wake up. Take the power and use it, you know?
And you know, our future generations are the people that are, you know, in school and going to be taking these jobs leading to careers and influence. Do they get it? Are you seeing any kind of turnaround? Do you have any ray of hope that things are getting better?
Well, I will keep hope, as Jesse would say, I'd keep hope alive. But it gets to places, I mentioned Oakland. Yeah, you go out to Skyline High School in Oakland, and the first thing you observe driving by the high school, very famous, rich in history, historical high school, the first thing you see about Skyline High School is that there's a daycare nursery there for the students' kids.
Yeah.
You're telling them it's okay.
Yeah.
Teen pregnancy is fine. We're going to take care of you.
Yeah.
It's not okay.
Yeah.
It's terrible. It leads a child to a life of doom without 2 solid parents.
As they say, you know, the best a child of a teenage mother can do is to learn to be a teenager.
That's about it.
Yeah.
And that's the system. And at our here in D.C., they're nursing along unemployment, extend the unemployment, extend the welfare. No. Get some tax credits out there, encourage invention, encourage innovation, encourage risk-taking. You know, you get one Thomas Edison, one Alexander Bell, and you've got millions of jobs created
That's right.
by these inventors and scientists. Need more George Washington Carvers.
Well, when you look at what you're doing, Harry, the National Black Chamber, as you say, how many chapters you have in the United States now?
140 right now.
140. But you also, in addition to chapters in the United States, you have chapters around the world. Tell us a little bit about that, the international development, and why are you putting so much emphasis into the international arena? Many people don't realize the black populations in these countries, particularly when it comes to the need for opportunity and entrepreneurship. So talk about that. You mentioned Colombia as one example, but tell us why you feel this is so important to what you're doing in this country.
Yeah, and people say, there's 1.5 billion Chinese, there's 1 billion Indians. Well, look here, there's 1.3 billion black folks. If we just look at one another, and Nigeria, Brazil, much larger in black populations than the United States. We're just 40 million here. You got 135 million in South America alone. You've got 800 million in the continent of Africa. You've got people who identify themselves as black and Africans in New Guinea, in Indonesia, throughout Samoa and Guam, the Philippines. The diaspora is large and huge. And when you start looking around in my travels, you find a lot of finely well-educated people of Africa descent that if we just start talking with one another, I get so much pride here in D.C. at the African American Museum of History and Culture that the Smithsonian is building, and the 3 main architects building it are black. The number 1 architect in the world is on the lead, and he is from Tanzania. He's based in London, but he is black as anyone else could be. The head architect, the construction managers, 2 of the 3 construction managers are black. Smoot Construction, Russell Construction. I'm very proud of that. And to see that $700 million project in the hands of people who are bona fide and qualified who happen to be black is something that every school should take a tour to the city. Every black school should take a tour to the city and see that museum and let it be known that African Americans built it.
Well, why is it that this is not given more attention, Harry? I know this is your focus, and you're doing an excellent job. But why is it that there's not more attention given to that? Why is this one of the best kept secrets?
I know John Lewis was I'd give him the most valuable player behind it. He was so upset about the Martin Luther King monument, about the fronting that was going on there, that they had white firms build that, and they claimed that there were black firms building it, and black architects, Chinese architects, and even the granite came from China, where Georgia, the home of Martin Luther King, is the granite state. They didn't even use Georgia granite. He was so upset about that and hurt, but he didn't cry and moan. He saw this museum coming down the track, and that's where he went to work behind the scenes. And he pulled it off. I'm glad to have personally congratulate him in front of his own people in Atlanta, because he didn't get many smiles from the White House or from other areas for some reason. For some strange reason. I don't know what it was. But he did it. We were there on the scene, and I'm so glad it happened.
Why is it that others didn't get upset, Harry? What makes it unusual for you to speak out, for John Lewis to speak out, for others, and the rest of the folk who are in decision-making positions, key decision-making positions, don't say anything? This kills your future today if we don't get onto the capitalism wagon or the economic wagon. Why are we not more upset, and what do you see happening?
They're so personal and so about they have arrived, not thinking about their children or their grandchildren, or what happens to my neighbor's children will happen to my children too. We don't think that far in advance. I believe that if I work hard and devote myself to this mission, the Lord's going to take care of me and my wife and my children. We're going to be okay. And doggone it, as we grow, we're doing fine. No one is we haven't been arrested. We haven't been bankrupt. We're doing fine. We're doing fine doing this kind of work, which I call God's work. And we have people in all of these countries who think that way. There is somebody in each country that thinks that way. And my goal is to go and find that person, he or she, and connect with them and connect all the dots around this globe where people of the African diaspora can enjoy the resources and the wealth of this great world.
Harry, do you think that by creating the international movement and the inertia from these countries that it has a impact in terms of how people will think in this country, or do you think that's just another avenue that has to be pursued? How do you feel about that?
Well, I think it's something special, and when this administration came on board and realized that I didn't think much about Obamacare and didn't think much about the TARP and the stimulus and all that, and really did not go along and dance to their music, their reaction was to try to kill me. They when I saw them take on the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, I said, well, they definitely going to step on me. They took on the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, which came back to bite them. You're messing with the most powerful institution in the world, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Business, the United States, the richest land in the world.
And one of the most effective. I was also on the board for 6 years,
right.
And, I know that very well. And I still use the Chamber as a regular guest because they have that impact. Absolutely, Harry.
Yeah, and I told Tom Donahue, president of the U.S. Chamber, you really impressed me. You are my hero, because when they went into attack mode on the U.S. Chamber, Tom was cool. He says, we're going to stay the course, stay true to our mission, and stay focused. They'll bounce off and go away. And sure enough, they did. So when Obama, I shouldn't say Obama, but his people, tried to form a rival organization and call it a Black Chamber of Commerce to confuse the public about what we were doing.
Well, wait a minute. What did you just say? This is new to me.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's in the court of law. I had to file suit.
What?
I had to file suit, man. And it's in D.C. court of law. And we settled, and what they learned was we got stronger. We got stronger. And internationally speaking, people went to us. A lot of the nations would come to the National Black Chamber of Commerce, because they couldn't find anybody to see them at the White House or in this administration. Department of Commerce, SBA, they don't want to deal with Africans. Yeah, it's crazy. We get our first black president, and then we start going to anti-black mode. I don't know. I don't know, Josh.
Harry, I try to stay out of politics, but politics has such an impact on business, and one of the questions that I have to ask, and here again, I'm going to save the last portion of the show so we can give tribute to Nelson Mandela, because there's been no greater person that's impacted the world any more than him. But you would think, in terms of the political environment, that when you do have leadership that's like you, in this case an African American president, that it would be favorable to African American business. And, I know you feel very strongly. Why do you feel strongly the way you do? I mean, you just gave one example. Is this kind of prevalent across the board, or has it just been a situation where it's been ignored?
It's been pretty sad when you start thinking about the number of black mayors we have, or the number of black city councils. When you see a Detroit spiraling down, and there hasn't been one white in the city of Detroit who has contributed to that downward spiral. And when it's kind of laughable, but I analyzed the Detroit City Council one time, took each person, look at their bios and all that, and the chair of the educational committee is a high school dropout. You got problems. It's a high school dropout, and he's chair of the educational committee. The mayor, the president of the city council, all corrupt, receiving money in grocery bags like the old school days. It's Detroit, Cleveland, others are in their situation because of poor leadership, poor fiscal management. And they can come out of it, but being poor, being rich has no color.
Well, Harry, one of the things and this could be the summation of, why these things are happening when you talk about the black leadership, the mayors, the council members, the elected officials, a black U.S. president, all down the line. When we talked earlier in the show about the emphasis, the energy, so much of what we think about and it dominates our focus is in the social agenda and in the areas that have to do with social programs, and is lack of understanding of the capitalistic areas of the economy. Had we had people with that sensitivity, would we be in this situation that we're in now? And if so, this thing is deeper than we thought.
We've had good examples, Josh. Maynard Jackson, Tom Bradley of Los Angeles.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and here's a guy, Tom Bradley of Los Angeles. Los Angeles has never had over 15% black population, but he built a coalition that took care of all entities.
Yep.
And to his greatness, and under him, under Maynard, under Tom Bradley, under Harold Washington,
yes,
you have great African American entrepreneurs growing and blooming and creating jobs. Those cities were meccas. Atlanta still is a mecca. I think the present mayor, Qasim, is doing very well, and he's a good student of Maynard Jackson. He's a very good student of it, and he wants to emulate that.
So if we could have this emphasis on entrepreneurship, on capitalism, on economics, it kind of produces a different kind of leadership that's necessary to have the kind of growth you have to have. Are you finding this internationally, Harry, in terms of the type of people that are taking on the key leadership roles in these various chambers and various organizations around the world?
I think the last true international ambassador for business was Ron Brown. Ron Brown, he went around the globe, and everywhere I went to Brazil, I went to Ghana. Ron Brown had already been there and left his mark. They understood it, and Ron Brown wanted to connect the dots. He left way too soon, and I think he was a good role model for people to emulate, because no matter what Ron was doing, and he was up there with the big boys, He wasn't forgetting about his past and where he came from.
Yeah.
His folks own the hotel. They were entrepreneurs.
We're talking to Harry Alford, who is the president and CEO of the National Black Chamber of Commerce. Harry, let's go into an area that I think impacts all of us, and it's one of those things that, we're lucky and privileged. Did you ever meet Nelson Mandela?
No.
I did. I had a chance to meet him.
Lucky you.
But you having the insights and the experience and the hands-on relationships that you have with blacks in business throughout the world. What did Nelson Mandela mean, and what did he do in terms of the impact on businesses in particular?
Courage was his strong suit, and his legacy will be his wisdom. He knew. He fought the man. I mean, he fought the evil guy, looked the evil guy in the face, called him evil, and dealt with him. And he went to violence at one point in time, just to get the attention out there. But he knew in the end, as he rotted in a jail cell for 27 years, should I say he seasoned in the jail cell for 27 years, he knew that it was going to be peace. It was going to have to be a lot of reconciliation and a lot of coming together. And unity was going to be the victory for his country. And he knew at the right time, when it came, that rugby game, that World Rugby game.
Yeah, I saw that actually this weekend. My wife and I saw that. We've seen it several times, but we had to see it again. And I just think that was one of the most brilliant moves of any politician that in history that I've ever seen.
He showed the world that South Africa is going to be okay, and it's going to be united. And they have some great laws. In South Africa has probably some of the best written laws for small business, but they got a couple of mistakes, some unintended consequences. But they have what's known as the Black Business Initiative. And the only problem with the Black Business Initiative is that they don't define black. Black is anything but white. So the populations of Asian, Indian, and Chinese especially, businesses flowing to South Africa has come in record fashion. They've got so many businesses now that have come from Chinese and Malaysians and Indians because they're participating in this program too. They understand a good program and found out that they were eligible. So it's coming along. I think South Africa is a first world country on a third world continent. They are indeed first world. They've got the natural resources. They've got security. Unlike Zimbabwe, which came along about the same time, and their leader, Mugabe, wanted to be mean. He wanted to do payback on the white settlers, and what they have now is a country that's a basket case. They were known as the breadbasket of Africa. They had the greatest farms in the world.
Yeah. And
they've all gone awry because they chased out the farmers.
Well, from an economic point of view, what I saw when I saw Invictus is that, you may not have liked the Afrikaners, and they may have done some things that are terrible, but they were businessmen personified. They knew how to deal with the economics. They knew how to deal with strength in terms of, the military, and they understood, the economic principles. They were in place. And by being able to take something as simple as a rugby game and convince the blacks and that this is a good thing, convince the whites that it's not going away. But what he did was keep things in place. He didn't disturb the progress that was made, and he was able to move on. And you made a good example with Zimbabwe, where everything was destroyed in order to rebuild. But what you can't rebuild are feelings. Mm-hmm. And you saw we're both here in Washington, but you can see what happens on that football game when people don't feel good about each other. Mm-hmm. I mean that was pathetic. But this is not a sports show. But I think that the same principles exist. That Mandela took what was working and he made it work better without disturbing what was important to a pretty great economy, a very good and stable and growing economy. How important is that to the black businesses going forward, and how do you see taking lessons from that in terms of the future for future entrepreneurs? Even though black is non-white, and I've experienced that. I've been to South Africa and I saw that, but it wasn't as overt because of the conditions there. But how does that help the businesses going forward when you can build on what was working, even though it needed to be changed or tweaked or what have you?
Yeah, I think you look in the past, and Booker T. Washington, I think one of the greatest African Americans who ever lived.
Amen.
He saw it. He said, all we have to do to survive in this country is if we formed our own businesses and just did business with each other, we would not only survive, we would thrive.
And it would be good for everybody.
You read his book, The Man Furthest Down. Anybody knows about this book? He takes the Eastern Europeans coming to the United States, didn't know a word of English, totally illiterate, arriving on a boat with no family, no one to look at, and in 10 years, they're thriving in New York and in Philadelphia and in Boston because they banded together and got their money together and started to build an economic foundation. Now, if they can do it, and they were slaves in Eastern Europe, they were serfs, if they could come over here without knowing the language or even having a historical background and do this within a decade, what is wrong with us?
Well, it just seems to me, Harry, there's so many examples of true north. You know, when you look at the example that you just mentioned, and you look at people that come with no background other than, you know, having had their own businesses and having the freedom to start those businesses under any circumstances, how does the government, in terms of government programs, I know you're not against them, I'm not against them, but, you know, you can't be reliant upon them. How has that hurt minority businesses and black businesses in particular, and how has it helped them?
I think you mentioned the word reliant. There's an over-reliance on these programs. And if you look at our successful businesses, you look at Smoot, you look at Herman Russell, you look at others, what has made them successful is that they were strong, they dared to go where no other has gone before, and they relied on themselves. And just about every successful long-term black-owned business, it goes right with the white-owned business, is family-based. The family was in it. It wasn't one member of the family was in it. They lived and breathed it. The brothers grew up in it. And second, third generation, it blossomed. So there's something about the family unit which we have trouble with. But if you can build that family unit, that alone is the foundation of a future. And in this free market that we live in, the sky is the limit, and color means nothing.
Well, I can say a big personal amen to that, and we know that story. Harry, tell us very briefly, I want to make sure that we have the contact information for the National Black Chamber of Commerce. Would you give that to us now, Harry?
Sure. Our website is www.national, spelled out BCC, as in Black Chamber of Commerce, .org. nationalbcc.org. Email is info@nationalbcc.org.
We've got about a minute or so. Harry, quickly, what are the highlights of the year that you feel good about, and what are the lowlights? I know I wanted to cover this, but we got into some other areas. Just very quickly, what are the key points that you feel are memorable in 2013?
Yeah, I think we started making headway with our international initiative, in that we have made strong contacts with. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, our power just went out. The phone's still working, I guess.
Yeah.
So we're making good headway in preparing for 2014. We've got a trade mission to Colombia, a trade mission to Senegal. We're actually doing a fact-finding mission to Cuba next November. And we've got a convention coming up in Chicago our big convention, July the 10th to the 14th.
We'll have you back on to talk about that, my friend, because
Please
you
do.
know
We'd love to have you come out and speak.
I would be happy to. You're one of I'm your fan, and I'm so proud of what you're doing. We've been talking to Harry Alford, who is the co-founder